remember that there was this big battle that was taking place. This was the great final battle of good and evil in this time between Ravana and his forces and that of Lord Ram. And towards the end of this, we saw that Ravana's forces were being defeated, and Indrajit, his son, comes forward, and he has this projection of Sita, and he destroys her, he kills her, which, as we talked about last time, Ram couldn't believe what he saw, seeing her head being chopped off in front of his eyes, and he fainted. But then, of course, Vibhishan came forward and explained that it was really just a trick, that Ravana would never allow Sita to be destroyed. I mean, after all, she was that great vision of perfection that he was after just as much as everyone else. He wanted her for himself, not, to let her die. And so Ravana would never allow Sita to be harmed. Well, he further went on to warn that Indrajit was planning to perform a ceremony to make himself invisible, and that Ram needed to stop him before it was completed. Well, his brother Lakshman is going to reach the site of the sacrifice, and Indrajit will be killed by Ram's brother Lakshman. Now, once this happens, we find that Ravana is in a state of complete and utter despair over the loss of his son. And he rushes onto the battlefield. He's ready to go at it with full force and full vigor. He wants to destroy Ram once and for all, and there's this big, massive battle that ensues. Ram begins using some mantras that he'd learned long ago from those great sages that we talked about back beginning. And he sends this unidentified weapon soaring through the sky, and it pierces Ravana in the heart, and Ravana falls over dead. His army is in shock, it's amazed, it doesn't know what to think of this. I mean, how could the great demon of ego, Ravana, be destroyed, but yet here he is lying dead in front of them. And so Ram has brought an end to the evil of Ravana. Now, the translation of the text that I've given you, I think, is one of the best that's out there in terms of being able to read, to carry the adventure forward. It's written in a nice language, but it leaves out something that you find in some translations that you don't find in others. And this is something that I think is very important. So just a few moments ago, I sent to the email of each of you a copy of a couple of pages from William Buck's translation of the Ramayana. In it, it has the entirety, in case you wanted to read it, of the letter that I'm going to be talking about right now. Because one of the things that's going to happen is that after Ravana is dead and his army is sort of left devastated and running away, Ram is going to get a message that was carved in stone from Ravana. There's basically a letter that before he went into this battle, Ravana had transcribed a letter to Ram, and upon his death, he had it delivered to Ram. Now, this is actually very important, and I don't know why this book would not make reference to it. Because here in the Western world, we're used to the idea that, hey, the evil is out there, we've defeated that evil, good is triumphed, yay, it's all over. We would rejoice in the death of the enemy. But it's not going to work that way in the Eastern world, because you have this sort of yin-yang mentality that the two sides have to balance each other out, that there's a value, there's a purpose to both of them. Yes, it's good that the evil has been destroyed, but we need to see that there is virtue within the defeated one, and that even the great enemy himself is part of the larger picture, the larger image of truth. We think about certain stories that we might know, and we see that we want to go into that battle, we want to defeat the enemy, but what's going to happen at the end? Do we just simply throw a big party because the enemy is dead? Well, sometimes we do that. But in the best stories and the better stories, we realize that there was some hidden virtue, some hidden value within the enemy, right? You look at the Star Wars saga and you learn to hate Darth Vader all the way through, but you get to the very end and you see that touch of humanity there. You see that sense of something special within him, in that he was fulfilling a higher purpose through his activities. So anyway, that's what this letter does, is it puts that human face upon Ravana. It shows that his actions are itself preordained in a way. They are, in a sense, necessary. And so in this letter, Ravana declares that in heaven, before they all came into being, Ram had promised Indra that he would kill him forever. But nothing is forever except God. Other than by dying, how can I make you take me into your own self? I was only a demon, and you're very hard to approach. Right? So these are some of the words that Ravana was using in that letter. He's saying, look, we had things laid out before the act of creation itself, before we were brought into being. I was going to kill you forever, but there's nothing in this world that is forever and eternal except for God. I wanted to get to God. I wanted to approach him. But being a demon, I don't know any way of being able to do this. How can I, as a demon, come towards that holy, good, and pure individual? You're very hard to approach. And so this was Ravana's way, of coming to Ram, of joining, in a sense, back to God. Everyone has that basic desire that they want to return back from which they came. We all came from that source of the one. We want to go back to that source of the one. But as a demon, as a figure who was brought here to act with a sense of evil, with a sense of corruption, how else can I do it but to allow myself to be taken and killed by God himself? It kind of, in a much larger scale, recreates what we saw earlier with the story of Sugriv and Vali, right? When the usurper monkey says, no, I don't want you to heal me. I was killed by God himself. There's nothing greater that I can take upon myself than that. The letter continues, it says, in seeking wisdom, I learned many things. You have forgotten who you are. I always knew. Still you do not know. Nothing you do ever fails. Ravana is acknowledging that he has always known that Ram is God. And much like the humility of Hanuman, Ram didn't really begin his life knowing who he was. He understood there was a purpose, there was a mission, there was something he had to do, but he didn't really understand the full purport of who he was. And he's telling him here, look, you still don't know who you are, but you are God. Nothing you do is ever going to fail. You see everything that happens and supports all creatures. I, this is Ravana speaking in the letter, saw that heaven was not permanent, and hell would not endure. All creatures that are separate from God are reborn over and over again. So he's acknowledging that, the longer that a person remains in that state of ego like he was, the longer they find themselves as separate entities or separate beings from the divine, the more rebirth they're going to have, the more suffering they're going to have. I knew you in a way you do not know yourself. Having been born into change, I never harmed Lakshmi. And he's using Sita's heavenly name here, of course. Sita's the avatar of Lakshmi. I only took her to lure you to me. I offered you my life and you accepted it. You are God and your energy flows through us all. You are Ram and Sita, born out of the earth. You are Ravana, the demon king. You are Hanuman. You are Indrajit, and you are Indra. You are the entirety of all. And so He's telling him, he's revealing, Ravana, the evil one, is revealing to Ram who he truly is. Ram is the ultimate being. He is Vishnu himself. He is the one true God from which everything emerges. And so you are the good, the evil, the male, the female, the every dichotomy that we can imagine, all of the players that we've been working with, they are all you. But he says, because you were born into this world in human form, you forgot this. You lose your memory, and you take on man's ignorance, as you do every single time. Right? Just like in Plato, that realm of being possesses absolute knowledge, but when the bit of soul breaks off to enter into that individual body in this world, we forget everything that was there before it. It's all gone, it's all lost, and we have to try slowly to regain it, because that's the way that our form works. The eternal can possess absolute knowledge, but the temporal cannot. So, since you are the divine being, but you were born into this world in human form. Why? Because again, Ravana could only be defeated by humans and animals. He had that boon that protected him from gods and demons. So Vishnu had to come into this world in human form, and that was Ram. But just like any other being that's born in human form, they forget their true nature. They lose who they were in that premortal existence. And so he doesn't understand his full nature, his full place. But Ravana is revealing that to him. You are the divine one. And so he concludes this saying, therefore, welcome back your Sita. I took her only for the purpose of getting you to come to me, so that we could play out this act, so that, the whole role can be fulfilled. You have destroyed me, and that has brought me back to you. And in doing so, I can reveal to you this great knowledge of who you truly are. The war is over. Welcome back your Sita. You have won. And that's where Ravana's great letter ends. Now Ram, he appreciates the letter that he's got, and it explains a lot of things for him. It explains that everything that's played out here is played out exactly the way that it had to be. That it was really, all of this was just Ravana's way of returning to God. But Rama is kind of uncomfortable in this newfound role as God. He wants to maintain his humanness. And so he breaks the letter and he turns his attention towards other issues.